I never imagined that winning the Canadian Business Excellence Award would be the night I discovered my daughter-in-law was planning to bury me alive, metaphorically speaking, of course. Though after what I learned, I'm not entirely certain about the metaphorically part. My name is Thomas Brennan, and at 63 years old, I'd built Brennan Marine Supply from a single storefront in Halifax into a chain of 17 locations across the Maritimes. We supplied everything from commercial fishing gear to recreational boating equipment. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work that employed over 200 Canadians and generated $42 million when I sold the majority stake 3 months ago. I kept 30% and stayed on as chairman. The plan was simple: transition the business over 2 years, then retire to my cabin on the South Shore, maybe do some sailing. My wife Caroline had died 4 years earlier from ovarian cancer, and the lake house we'd bought together sat empty, waiting for me to finally slow down and enjoy it. The award ceremony was held at the Cunard Center in downtown Halifax. Black tie, champagne, the works. They'd flown in my son Marcus and his wife Stephanie from Toronto, where Marcus worked as operations director for our Ontario expansion. He was 41, my only child, and the person I'd been grooming to eventually take over my chairman role. Stephanie was 36, blonde, immaculately dressed, with the kind of smile that belonged in toothpaste commercials. They'd been married for 4 years. She worked in digital marketing and brand consultancy, which as far as I could tell meant she posted things on Instagram and charged people money for it. She had about 300,000 followers who seemed intensely interested in her opinions about juice cleanses and luxury handbags. I'll admit, I'd had reservations when Marcus first brought her home. Caroline, bless her, had been more direct. That woman looked up your net worth before she looked at your son's face. She'd told me one night. But Caroline got sick shortly after their engagement, and in my grief, I'd pushed aside those concerns. Marcus seemed happy. Who was I to judge? The ceremony went well. I gave a speech about hard work, maritime resilience, and the importance of treating employees like family. The kind of speech people clap for politely while checking their phones. Afterward, we had dinner at the Press Gang, one of Halifax's finest restaurants, housed in a beautiful stone building that used to be a 19th century banking house. I ordered the lobster. Marcus had the steak. Stephanie had a salad that cost $48 and consisted primarily of microgreens. She pushed around her plate while taking photos of it from various angles. To Dad, Marcus raised his glass. And to new beginnings, we toasted. The wine was excellent, a 2015 Bordeaux I'd selected specifically for the occasion. Stephanie didn't drink hers, claiming she was doing a digital detox cleanse that somehow included champagne but excluded red wine. The logic escaped me, but I'd long since stopped trying to understand her rules. Halfway through the meal, Stephanie excused herself to the washroom. Marcus leaned forward. Dad, I wanted to talk to you about something. The Ontario expansion. Let's not do business tonight, I interrupted gently. Tonight, we celebrate. He nodded, but there was something in his eyes. Anxiety? Guilt? I couldn't place it. Stephanie returned, phone in hand, typing rapidly. She sat down without looking up. Everything all right? I asked. Oh, yes. Just coordinating with my management team. We're launching a new partnership Monday. She smiled, that bright smile. You wouldn't believe how much admin goes into authentic content creation. I wouldn't, indeed. 15 minutes later, I excused myself to use the facilities. The men's room at the Press Gang is downstairs, a narrow staircase leading to a brick-walled corridor. As I washed my hands, a young man in server's uniform appeared beside me. He was maybe 25, nervous, with the kind of patchy beard that suggested he was trying to look older than he was. Mr. Brennan, he said quietly, I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to show you something. I dried my hands, curious. Yes? He pulled out his phone, fingers shaking slightly. I follow your daughter-in-law on Instagram. The main account, you know, the public one with all the motivational posts and stuff. I waited. But she has another account, a private one. My girlfriend got added to it a few months ago because she works in influencer marketing. It's Mr. Brennan. I think you need to see this. He showed me the screen. The account name was at Steph Real Talk, with maybe 2,000 followers. The bio read, what I actually think, friends and industry only. The young man scrolled to a post from earlier that evening, a photo of me on stage, accepting my award, with the caption, 2 hours of watching the fossil, collect his participation trophy. Someone please tell me there's a cash bar. Have the first well, my chest tightened, but I kept my face neutral. Go on, he scrolled further. A photo from Christmas, taken at my home in Chester. I was carving the turkey, wearing the ridiculous apron Marcus had given me that said Grill Sergeant. The caption, Annual Pilgrimage to the Nursing Home Vibes House. How many stories about the old days can one human endure? Taking bets. Over under is 47. Number send help. Number Oldman smells. The young man's voice dropped to a whisper. There's more. Worse ones. I thought. I don't know. I thought you should know. She's your family and everything, but I nodded slowly. Show me the worst one. He hesitated, then scrolled back several weeks. A video, filmed in what I recognized as my son's Toronto condo. Stephanie was lounging on their couch, wine glass in hand. The caption, Sunday night planning session. She was speaking to the camera in a conspiratorial whisper, like she was sharing secrets with friends. Okay, so update on Operation Retirement. Marcus finally got the old man to agree to the succession timeline. 2 years, then he's supposed to step down as chairman. But 2 years? I ran the numbers with our lawyer. Tom's only 63. These Maritime guys live forever on their fish and stubbornness. We're talking potentially 15 more years of him meddling in every decision, critiquing every strategy, blocking any real innovation. She took a sip of wine. Marcus won't admit it, but his dad still treats him like he's 12. Won't sign off on any major changes without a full committee review, which is basically Tom saying I need to think about it until he can find a reason to say no. Meanwhile, the Ontario expansion is hemorrhaging opportunities because Dad wants to maintain maritime values or whatever that means. Newsflash, it's 2024, not 1987. Nobody cares about your lobster trap stories, Tom. The camera zoomed slightly on her face. So here's the play. We've been documenting everything. Every time Tom forgets a name at a meeting goes in the file. Every time he needs something repeated, file. That weird thing where he spaces out sometimes? File. We're building a case for cognitive decline. Not enough for a legal challenge yet, but we're getting there. Marcus's lawyer says with the right medical documentation, we could potentially accelerate the transition, maybe even suggest a medical leave. Get him off the board entirely within 6 months instead of 2 years. She laughed, and it was a sound I'd never heard from her in person, sharp, calculating. I know it sounds harsh, but honestly, it's mercy. The man's a relic. He still uses a BlackBerry, for God's sake. He prints out emails. He thinks TikTok is a type of mint. His strategic planning sessions involve spreadsheets from Excel 2003. We're trying to build a modern company, and he's the anchor around our necks. A $42 million anchor that won't let go of the rope. The video ended. I stood there, water still dripping from my hands onto the brick floor. There are more, the young man said quietly. Posts about selling the business completely once he's gone, closing the Maritime locations, moving everything to Ontario, cutting staff by 60%. She talks about it like it's already decided. I looked at him. What's your name, son? Dylan, sir. Dylan Mackenzie. Thank you, Dylan. I reached for my wallet, but he stepped back. I don't want money, Mr. Brennan. My dad worked at your Dartmouth location for 11 years before he passed. You came to his funeral. You paid for it, actually, though you probably don't remember. You told my mom the company would cover it, that Dad was family. His voice cracked slightly. So yeah, when I saw what she was posting about you, about the company, I thought you should know. I gripped his shoulder. I remember your father, Donald Mackenzie. Good man. Knew more about marine diesel engines than anyone I ever met. I paused. Can you send me those screenshots? And Dylan, not a word to anyone, especially not upstairs. Yes, sir. He sent them to my phone. I do, in fact, know how to receive photographs electronically, despite what my daughter-in-law believes, and I climbed the stairs back to dinner. My lobster had gone cold, but I cut into it anyway, chewing mechanically while Stephanie told some elaborate story about a brand partnership deal. Marcus laughed at the appropriate moments. He held her hand across the table, and I saw it clearly now the way his eyes flickered to her before he answered any of my questions, like he was checking for approval. The way he'd aged in 4 years, new lines around his mouth, a tightness in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. My son had become a stranger, or perhaps I'd been the stranger all along, too focused on business to notice the distance growing. "Dad, you're quiet." Marcus was watching me with concern. "You feeling okay?" "Just tired," I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. I was tired. Bone tired in a way that had nothing to do with the late hour. "It's been a long night. We should get you back to the hotel," Stephanie said, already signaling for the bill with the kind of casual authority that suggested she'd already decided the evening was over. "You need your rest. You're not as young as you used to be." There it was, the little needles, carefully placed. I paid, of course I paid. I always paid, and we said our goodbyes outside the restaurant. Marcus hugged me. Stephanie kissed my cheek, her perfume expensive and cloying. "Proud of you, Dad," Marcus said. "Really?" I watched them walk away. Stephanie immediately pulling out her phone, no doubt already composing her next post. Marcus's arm around her waist, his head tilted toward her in that attentive way that used to be directed at me, back when he was young and believed his father hung the moon. I didn't go back to the hotel. Instead, I walked down to the waterfront, past the historic properties, to a bench overlooking the harbor. The water was dark and calm, boats bobbing gently at their moorings. This was my city, my home. I'd built something here that mattered, and my son was plotting to dismantle it with a woman who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to be removed. I sat there for 2 hours, watching the ships, thinking about Caroline. She would have known what to do. She always did. But Caroline was gone, and I was here, alone with my phone full of screenshots that proved my family, what was left of it, saw me as a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. The question wasn't whether I would fight back. I'd built a business from nothing in one of the toughest industries in the country. I'd survived recessions, industry collapses, and the loss of my wife. I was a 63-year-old man from Newfoundland who still hauled lobster traps for fun on weekends. No, the question was how. Because Stephanie was right about one thing. These Maritime guys are stubborn. We survive, we endure, and when necessary, we make sure the people who underestimate us learn exactly how expensive that mistake can be. I pulled out my phone and made a call. Brian Patterson had been my lawyer for 30 years. He answered on the second ring, despite the late hour. "Brian," I said, "I need you to clear your schedule tomorrow and find me the best private investigator in Toronto. Someone who specializes in social media forensics and corporate intelligence." "Tom, it's 11:30. What's going on?" I looked out at the harbor, at the city I'd helped build through decades of hard work and honest dealing. "I just found out my son and his wife are planning to have me declared incompetent so they can take over my company." "And Brian?" "They're going to regret underestimating an old maritime fossil who still knows how to fight." There was a pause, then a low chuckle. "I'll have someone in your office by 9. Tom, you all right?" "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." I hung up and sat in the darkness a while longer, listening to the water lap against the docks, already planning my next moves. In chess, they call it a discovered check, when you move one piece and suddenly reveal a threat your opponent never saw coming. Stephanie wanted to play games with files and documentation and social media posts. She had no idea who she was playing against. But she was about to learn, and the tuition for that particular education was going to cost her everything. The investigation took 6 weeks. Brian's team was thorough, frighteningly so. What they uncovered made Dylan's screenshots look like amateur hour. Stephanie hadn't just been building a case against me. She'd been building an empire. The lead investigator, a former RCMP officer named Sarah Chen, laid it all out in my office one gray morning in late November. Rain hammered against the windows while she clicked through her presentation. "Mr. Brennan, your daughter-in-law has been planning this for approximately 2.5 years, starting about 18 months into her marriage to your son." She pulled up a timeline. It began small. She started documenting what she called your senior moments in a private journal. Forgot a colleague's name at a company picnic, needed reading glasses to review a contract. Asked your assistant to repeat information you'd allegedly already been given, though our interviews suggest you'd never been given that information in the first place. Gaslighting, I said quietly. Essentially, yes. She created situations designed to make you doubt your memory, then documented your confusion as evidence of cognitive decline. Her private Instagram was just the public-facing element. The real work was happening behind the scenes. Sarah clicked to the next slide. A web of connections and dollar amounts that made my stomach turn. She's been cultivating relationships with 3 of your board members. Dinners, golf outings, charity events, always positioning herself and Marcus as the future of Brennan Marine. Meanwhile, she's been feeding them concerns about your capacity to lead. Nothing actionable, just seeds of doubt. Tom seemed confused in the last meeting. Has anyone else noticed him repeating himself? Maybe it's time to think about succession planning. Which board members? Davidson, Cho, and Martell. I nodded slowly. All relatively recent additions, brought on after the expansion. Davidson, I'd never fully trusted, too ambitious, too smooth. The other 2 surprised me. There's more, Sarah continued. She's been in contact with a consultant group out of Vancouver, VentureX Capital. They specialize in what they call corporate optimization. Basically, they come in, gut companies, and flip them for profit. She's been feeding them financial data about Brennan Marine for 8 months. That's illegal. It is. But she's careful. Nothing directly from your systems. She's been photographing documents Marcus brings home, taking screenshots of his laptop when he's in the shower, recording his phone calls. She's built an entire shadow archive of your company's operational data. I felt sick. Marcus knows? Sarah's expression softened. That's complicated. From what we can determine, he's aware of some of it. The succession timeline, certainly. The board cultivation. He thinks they're just positioning him for leadership. But the medical documentation, the planned sell-off, the VentureX contact, we don't believe he knows the full extent. She's been very careful to frame everything as supporting his career while keeping the deeper plans hidden. What about the medical documentation? She's been trying to get you to see specific doctors. 3 referrals in the past year to Dr. Michael Thornton, a neurologist in Toronto. He's legitimate, but he's also known for being, let's say, generous with cognitive decline diagnoses, particularly when families express concerns. She's been building a narrative that you're in denial about memory issues and refusing proper evaluation. I remembered. Marcus had mentioned his doctor friend several times. Just a checkup, Dad. Better safe than sorry. I declined, figuring I felt fine and didn't need some Toronto specialist when I had a perfectly good doctor in Halifax. Now I understood. It wasn't about my health. It was about documentation. What's the end game? I asked. Sarah clicked to a final slide. Based on her private messages and the VentureX preliminary proposal, the plan is this. Get you to step down or prove incompetence within 6 months. Marcus takes over as chairman. Within a year, they restructure close 8 of the Maritime locations, cut staff by about 65%, consolidate operations in Ontario where labor is cheaper and regulations are more flexible. Then they sell to VentureX, or a similar firm within 2 years. Projected value after restructure, $78 million. Your 30% stake would be worth about $23 million, but as someone declared incompetent or medically unable to serve, you'd have limited ability to contest the restructuring decisions. And Marcus's share? $49 million, split with Stephanie. Though based on her messages to her divorce lawyer, yes, she already has one on retainer. She's planning to leave Marcus within 6 months of the sale. Prenup is weak on post-marriage asset appreciation. She'd walk away with approximately $20 million. I sat back in my chair. Through the window, I could see the harbor, the same view I'd had for 37 years. The docks where we'd loaded our first shipment. The warehouse that had seemed impossibly large when I'd signed the lease with hands shaking from both excitement and terror. Show me everything, I said. It took 3 days to review all the evidence. Screenshots, recordings, financial documents, message threads. Sarah had even managed to access Stephanie's cloud storage, legally questionable, but everything was verified through independent sources. The most damning evidence came from Stephanie's own words. Messages to friends, posts on her private social media, voice memos she'd recorded as personal reflections. In one, recorded while she was apparently at a yoga class. She said, "The hardest part isn't dealing with Tom. He's basically already 1 foot in the retirement home, mentally speaking. The hard part is keeping Marcus convinced this is all for him. He still has these little guilt attacks. She's my dad, Steph. He built this company, Steph. Maybe we should slow down, Steph. It's exhausting." But I just remind him about his father's outdated practices holding him back, and he gets on board again. Men are so easy to manipulate when you position things as threats to their ego. Another, from a video call with someone I didn't recognize. Honestly, when I researched maritime business owners to target, Tom was perfect. Widower, only 1 kid, successful but not sophisticated enough to see it coming. These old-school guys built everything on handshakes and trust. They don't know how to protect themselves from someone who actually understands modern corporate maneuvering. It's like taking candy from a baby. If the baby was worth $42 million. She laughed. The person on the other end laughed too. I watched that video 3 times, memorizing every word, every gesture, the casual cruelty of her smile. Then I made my plan. I called a special board meeting for December 15th. Full board attendance required. I told them we needed to discuss strategic restructuring for the coming year. Davidson, Cho, and Martel seemed particularly pleased by the invitation. I'd seen the messages where Stephanie told them this might be when I'd announced my decision to step down early for health reasons. I also invited Marcus and Stephanie. "I want you both there," I told my son over the phone. "This affects your future." "Of course, Dad. Stephanie and I will fly in the night before." The morning of the meeting, I arrived at our headquarters early. The building sat on the Dartmouth waterfront, a renovated naval facility I'd bought and restored 15 years ago. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, with a view of Halifax across the water. Brian Patterson was already there, along with Sarah Chen. I'd also invited 3 other people. Janet Murphy, our longest-serving employee and current director of operations. Robert McIntyre, the investigative journalist who'd broken several major corporate fraud cases in Atlantic Canada, and my nephew Peter, who worked as a federal prosecutor in Ottawa and had taken personal leave to attend. The board members arrived first, taking their usual seats. Confusion rippled through the room when they saw the additional attendees, but I waved off questions. All will be explained. Marcus and Stephanie were last, arriving with matching leather portfolios and the kind of polished confidence that comes from believing you've already won. Stephanie kissed my cheek. "Morning, Tom. You look well." "Thank you, dear. Please sit." They took seats near the head of the table, close to me. Stephanie placed her phone face down on the table, already positioning to document whatever she thought was about to happen. I stood, looking around at the gathered faces. Some I'd worked with for decades. Others were newer, brought on during expansion. All of them had helped build something I was proud of. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "I've called this meeting to discuss the future of Brennan Marine Supply, specifically regarding leadership succession and strategic direction." I saw Marcus and Stephanie exchange a glance. She gave him a tiny nod. "Over the past several months, I've been made aware of concerns about my capacity to continue serving as chairman. Concerns about my memory, my judgment, my ability to lead this company into a modern era." Davidson leaned forward slightly. Cho and Martel looked uncomfortable but attentive. "I've also become aware that some people believe it's time for me to step aside. That I'm a... What was the phrase? I pulled out my phone and read directly from one of Stephanie's screenshots. A $42 million anchor that won't let go of the rope. The room went absolutely silent. Stephanie's face drained of color. Marcus looked confused, glancing between his wife and me. "Dad, what?" I held up a hand. "Let me finish, son, please." I nodded to Sarah, who dimmed the lights and pulled up the first image on the screen behind me. Stephanie's private Instagram account, displayed in crystal clarity for everyone to see. This is at Steph Real Talk, a private social media account maintained by my daughter-in-law, Stephanie Brennan. It has approximately 2,000 followers, primarily people in the influencer and marketing industries. On this account, Stephanie has spent the past 2 years documenting what she describes as my cognitive decline, mocking my age and abilities, and discussing plans to remove me from leadership of the company I built. I clicked through images, the posts about the award ceremony, the Christmas dinner, the video about Operation Retirement. Marcus had gone white. Stephanie, what the hell is this? It's out of context, she said quickly, her voice tight. Those are just jokes. Venting. Everyone does it. Everyone documents their father-in-law's alleged incompetence to build a legal case, I asked mildly. Everyone consults with divorce lawyers while planning to defraud their husband out of millions, because Sarah, my investigator here, found that quite unusual. Sarah clicked to the next series of slides, messages to the board members, the VentureX communications, the medical documentation strategy. Stop, Stephanie said, standing abruptly. This is illegal. You can't just invade someone's privacy like this. Actually, Peter spoke up from the end of the table, when that privacy violation involves evidence of fraud, conspiracy to commit corporate theft, and potentially elder abuse, the legal protections become quite complicated, particularly when much of this was documented on company devices or involved company proprietary information. I didn't use company. You photographed documents Marcus brought home on his company laptop, Sarah said calmly. You recorded phone conversations he had with board members about company business. You shared financial projections and strategic plans with an outside investment firm without authorization. The chain of evidence is quite clear. I watched Stephanie's face cycle through emotions, shock, anger, panic, calculation. She was trying to find an angle, a way to spin this. She turned to Marcus. Baby, you have to understand. I was doing this for us. Your father is holding you back. He doesn't trust you to lead. I was trying to help you. Help me? Marcus's voice cracked. You've been planning to divorce me, to take the money and leave. That's not those messages where I was angry. I didn't mean... Which part didn't you mean? I asked. The part where you called him easy to manipulate? The part where you told your friend you researched maritime widowers to find a target worth millions? The part where you described our family Christmas as nursing home vibes, while posting photos pretending to be grateful for our family? She sat down heavily. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Now, I continued, here's what's going to happen. Sarah, please distribute the packets. Sarah handed folders to each board member. Inside, you'll find detailed documentation of everything we've discussed, along with a comprehensive report on the individuals who've been communicating with Mrs. Brennan about potential restructuring and sale of the company. Davidson, Cho, and Martel looked like they wanted to disappear through the floor. Gentlemen, I addressed them directly. I'm disappointed. I brought you onto this board because I believed in your capabilities. I'm sure you thought you were just networking, building relationships, but you allowed yourselves to be manipulated into questioning my competence without ever coming to me directly. That's not how we operate here. It's not how we've ever operated. Tom, we never meant. I'm sure you didn't. Which is why I'm giving you a choice. You can resign from the board immediately with a neutral reference, or we can have a very public discussion about your lack of fiduciary duty to this company and its shareholders. What'll it be? All three submitted resignation letters before the meeting ended. I turned back to Marcus and Stephanie. My son looked broken, staring at his hands. Stephanie was crying, whether from genuine emotion or tactical performance. I couldn't tell anymore. Marcus, I said gently, look at me, son. He raised his eyes. They were red-rimmed, devastated. I'm not going to lie to you. This hurts worse than anything I've experienced since your mother died. You're my only child. I built this company thinking someday you'd run it, that we'd work together, that I'd teach you everything I knew, and instead, I find out you've been gathering evidence to have me declared incompetent. Dad, I swear I didn't know about most of this. The medical stuff, the VentureX deal, the divorce, but you knew some of it, I said. You knew she was documenting my supposed memory issues. You knew she was positioning you with the board. You brought me referrals to her hand-picked neurologist. You knew enough, Marcus, and you went along with it. He couldn't meet my eyes. Here's what I'm offering you. One chance. 1. You divorce Stephanie within 60 days. You enter therapy, real therapy, not couples counseling. Individual therapy to understand how you let someone manipulate you into betraying your own father. You take a leave of absence from the company for 6 months to figure out who you are without her influence. And then we see. If you do the work, if you show me you understand what happened and why it was wrong, if you rebuild some semblance of trust, then maybe we can talk about your future with Brennan Marine. But it won't be as my successor. That ship has sailed. At best, you'd be an employee, starting from a position where you have to prove yourself again. And if I don't, then you're out. Completely. I'll buy out your shares at current valuation, which is generous, considering, and you'll sign a non-compete agreement. You and Stephanie can go build your life somewhere else, far away from everything I created. Marcus looked at his wife. She was staring at the table, mascara running down her cheeks. I need time to think, he said quietly. You have 24 hours. Brian will send you the paperwork. I turned to Stephanie. This was the part I'd been looking forward to, and I felt guilty about how much satisfaction I was taking in it. Stephanie, you have a choice too. You can leave quietly, right now. We'll arrange a divorce settlement, basic, nothing generous, but enough that you're not destitute. Or we can do this the hard way, where I release everything we've found to Robert here, who I'm sure would love to write about influencer fraud and corporate conspiracy. Your sponsors, your followers, your entire carefully constructed brand, all gone. Plus potential criminal charges for fraud and theft of proprietary information. She finally looked up at me, and the mask was completely off. No more sweet smiles, no more daughterly affection, just cold, calculating hatred. You're a bitter old man who can't stand that he's become irrelevant. She spat. Marcus deserved better than living in your shadow. This company deserved modern leadership. Instead, you're going to what? Run it into the ground out of spite? No, I said calmly. I'm going to run it exactly as I have been, with integrity, with respect for the people who work here, and with an eye towards sustainable growth rather than quick profit. Janet will be taking over as CEO within 6 months. She's earned it. And my nephew, Peter, who has more integrity in his little finger than you'll ever have, will be joining the board as my eventual successor to chairman. I leaned forward slightly. You thought you could manipulate your way into millions. Stephanie, you thought I was just some old fool from the Maritimes who wouldn't see you coming. But here's what you didn't understand. People like me, we didn't build successful businesses by being naive. We did it by being smart, tough, and careful about who we trust. You were never the master manipulator you thought you were. You were just transparent enough that a 25-year-old server at a restaurant could see right through you. Her face went red. You can't prove half of this would hold up in court. Try me, I said. Please. I would love nothing more than to spend my retirement funding a legal battle that exposes everything you've done. I can afford it. Can you? She stood abruptly, grabbed her bag, and left the room without another word. We heard her footsteps echoing down the hall, then the slam of the exterior door. Marcus sat frozen, staring at the space where she'd been. Son, I said softly, I'm sorry. I truly am. I know you loved her, but that woman never loved you. She loved what you could give her access to, and the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start rebuilding your life. He nodded slowly, then stood. Can I have those 24 hours? Of course. He left without looking at anyone, his shoulders hunched like he was carrying the weight of the world. Marcus chose the therapy and leave of absence. It wasn't what I'd hoped for. Some part of me had fantasized about a tearful reconciliation, about my son begging forgiveness and us starting over. But life rarely gives you the ending you want. Stephanie filed for divorce within a week. She tried to fight the prenup, but Brian's team buried her in documentation. She walked away with $50,000 and an agreement to never contact any member of my family again. 3 months later, her Instagram following had dropped to under 100,000. Turns out, when your brand is built on authenticity, and several major news outlets report that you're a fraud who tried to steal from your own family, sponsors disappear quickly. Marcus is in Toronto, working as a consultant for a marine supply company that's not mine. We talk once a month, awkward phone calls where we discuss weather and industry news and carefully avoid anything meaningful. His therapist says it's progress. I'm not sure I believe that, but I'm trying. Janet is thriving as CEO. She's implemented 3 new efficiency programs and expanded our indigenous partnerships in northern communities. The company is doing better than it has in years. As for me, I finally made it to the lake house. I spend my weekends there now, sailing and reading, and occasionally having dinner with old friends. Peter comes up sometimes, and we talk about the business and the future. People ask if I regret how I handled things, if I should have been softer on Marcus, more forgiving. But here's the truth. Forgiveness doesn't mean accepting betrayal. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen or that it didn't matter. You can forgive someone and still maintain boundaries. You can love your child and still refuse to let them destroy what you built. Marcus had a choice. Every step of the way, he had a choice. He chose his wife over his father, chose potential millions over integrity, chose to go along with a plan that would have destroyed 200 jobs and a company that had been a pillar of the maritime economy for 4 decades. Those choices have consequences. Maybe someday we'll rebuild something. Maybe we won't. But I sleep well at night knowing I did what was necessary to protect the people who depend on Brennan Marine supply, the workers, the communities, the partners who've been with us for decades. And I learned something valuable. Never underestimate an old maritime businessman. We're tougher than we look, smarter than people assume, and we have very long memories. Stephanie thought she could play games with someone like me. She found out the hard way that the game was rigged from the start, just not in the way she'd planned. And that's a lesson she'll carry for the rest of her life.